all on this side, but it is my pleasure to introduce Donna Jolly with Halo Heat Sauna Studios. And she is going to talk to us today, and we are excited to hear everything you have to speak about. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bridget. Hello, everyone. Okay, so I know you guys saw on the LinkedIn. Okay, first of all, I'm going to tell you this. I'm getting old, so I have to wear glasses when I read stuff. So just bear with me. And I'm going to do the librarian thing when I look at you. So just humor me. So with that, though, I know on LinkedIn it said recovery. And was it Dave? Yeah, Dave, you came in and said, is this a ladies only thing? No, it's not a ladies only thing. And I'm glad to see some male faces because really recovery is for everyone. And I purposely did not put recovery in the title of the talk today because of that reason. Because people hear recovery and they're like, oh, they're going to talk about self-care. Well, it's more than just self-care. It really starts with the capacity to even be able to do anything. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today. In order to be an effective leader, it starts with your capacity. And how do you get capacity? Well, recovery is a part of that. So with that being said, I would love for everyone to take a quick moment. And I want you to be very, very honest with me. When you first woke up, what did you do? Go down. Okay, we're going to use the mouse since it doesn't want to do that. There we go. What did you do? Before you checked your email, because I know everybody's phone sits right next to their bed, right? Good, Braun, good. I'm glad yours does not. But everybody, how many people's phone is right next to their bed? See, you're the outliers, but it's beautiful. How many of you picked up that phone and immediately said, okay, what's the weather? What's my email? Did somebody send me a text message?
After hitting snooze.
Yeah, right.
3 times. 3?
Probably.
3?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. 3 alarms, checking your emails. Well, that is not a good thing. That is not a good thing. So we all look at our calendar, we read the news, and the news is not fun. We start thinking about payroll. If you're like me, you start thinking about, oh my gosh, okay, I got to do payroll today. Maybe you've had an employee, they've got a difficult conversation that you have to have later that afternoon, and you're like, okay, how is that going to go? This morning I woke up and I was like, okay, I have a keynote. How is it going to go? And my mind starts racing instantly, right? Happens to a lot of us. So why is it that we do that we check our email, but we're not checking in with ourselves first thing in the morning? We're not lying there for a quick moment and saying to ourselves, how do I feel? How did I sleep? What did I dream about? How many of us actually remember our dreams? Yeah. What did I dream about? That dream is something that's subconsciously trying to work through, that you were trying to work through. But we don't sit and stop and think about it when we first wake up. Do we take time and have a little bit of gratitude before we get out of bed? So, if we're not noticing those things, what does that mean? Our feet are touching the floor before we're thinking about these things. We're thinking about everything else. And the problem with that is that a lot of us, that feeling of, I've got to check my email, I've got to answer this, I've got to do that, we've started to wear it as a badge of honor. We started to think about it as, well, that's just the cost of being an adult. We started to think about it as, that's what it's like to just get older and have all these responsibilities. We're neglecting our physical and mental self. And honestly, I don't think that is how we should be. I don't think that is the price for a successful life. I don't think that is how we should be living. We've started to normalize something that should be considered abnormal. Stress is inevitable. But hard work, while it can be meaningful, it should not be the normal. Because what happens is continuing in that kind of fashion diminishes our capacity. And we're going to go through what that actually means. So, in order to be effective leaders, ultimately, we are limited by the quality of our internal capacity. Not our intelligence, not our ambition, not our worth ethic. It is our capacity. Our ability to think clearly, to make decisions, and to stay curious under pressure. So, if we have to have those difficult conversations, how do we do that without being reactive? If we've already reached our limit because we read the news, checked the email, answered text messages, rushed to get the kids their stuff together, and Johnny forgot his soccer shoes and now you got to run back home. But then you get to the office and you're supposed to have that difficult conversation with that employee. Where is your capacity sitting? So the challenge is that our capacity doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes quietly, almost invisibly. One day we'll wake up and we realize that the person that's leading our business, that's leading our teams, we're not leading at our best. So I'm telling you all of this because I've lived that. And I'm going to share a bit of my story along the way. But before I share that story, I'm going to share a fun but interesting story. And it has absolutely nothing to do with business, but it does have to do with leadership and self-understanding of leadership. It's about skiing. So several years ago, I decided to go to Vail, Colorado with a group of girls. And I considered myself a pretty decent skier. I had confidence. I had lived in the Midwest long enough. I had practiced. I had my own skis. I was ready to go. I had gotten good enough to go on a black diamond in the Midwest. So I was like, oh, I'm going to nail this. It's going to be great. I'm so excited. It's my first big ski trip. So we arrive at Vail. We get on the lift. We get off at the top. See, you're laughing at me already.
I snowboard. I know.
You know.
I snowboard.
You know. Yeah. See? He can corroborate this. He wasn't even there and he knows. So I get off the lift, right? And I'm standing at the top of the mountain and I'm looking down, and I kid you not, that thing went. And I'm standing there on the skis and I'm kind of like sliding back and I'm looking around, and there was these guys there and they say, "Are you okay?" I was like, I thought this was the green. They're like, "It is green." What do you mean? Like, they're like, "Oh, just green means it's been groomed." That is all. I had a freak out moment. I realized the mountain I was dealing with had changed. What they call green looked nothing like green runs that I knew. Didn't even look like a blue or a black. It was steeper, longer, far less forgiving. So I stood there and I was like, "Girl, you are not prepared for this." So what is a girl to do? I took my skis off, put them over my shoulder, and started to walk down the mountain. Not exactly what I imagined when I booked the trip, right? But later that day, I swallowed my pride, headed over to the bunny slopes, and spent the rest of my trip there. Had a great time. Great time. So, that surprised me. I did not feel like I failed at that trip. I didn't, but I left with some clarity. I said, I hadn't become a worse skier. It was just a different type of mountain, and I wasn't prepared. So as leaders, I think that's where a lot of us may find ourselves time to time. We're faced with a different type of challenge, and we just might not be prepared. The mountain has changed. The demands become steeper. The pace is faster. Uncertainty is greater. Expectations don't stop. But many of us still are trying to climb that mountain or ski down that mountain with the preparation that we had yesterday. And we begin to struggle. So we start to then assume there's got to be something wrong with us. We might tell ourselves, okay, I just need to work harder. I just got to push through this. I'll rest later. Have you ever heard, I'll sleep when I'm dead? I've said that. But what if that's really not the answer? What if the answer is becoming better prepared for the mountain that we're actually climbing? Because what I've learned is that more than 20 years of helping various organizations, it is really about restoring our capacity in order to be able to solve problems and don't burn out. When people lose their capacities, organizations actually begin to feel it too. So today, I challenge the way that we've been thinking about performance, leadership, and even success itself. Because sustainable leadership doesn't begin with better time management. It begins with understanding the systems that power every decision we make, which is ourselves, bringing us to recovery. So people often assume that, okay, Donna, you own a wellness business. So you've always understood the importance of recovery and that's just how you live. And I will tell you that is so far from the truth. In fact, most of my career, it was the complete opposite. Because I believed what most high achievers, overachievers believe. And that's if I only work hard enough, if I work the long hours, if I solve all of the problems, if I go, everything else will just take care of itself. That is how I lived for most of my adult life. So I started my career in healthcare. I worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And starting out, I didn't have a glamorous job. I was a data analyst and administrative support during Y2K. So I was like the low man on the totem pole. I grew there, looked for opportunities, took on more challenges, did more, and continued to grow. Eventually, I became a business systems analyst, then a senior analyst, and then over time, I moved into consulting. Then the next 20 years, I'm aging myself. I look good though. I look good. Next 20 years, I had the privilege of working with various healthcare organizations, hospitals, dental systems, life sciences companies. I worked with Fortune 500s all across the country. I led teams through mergers and acquisitions, large business transformation, technology platform implementations, strategic portfolio management. But most of my weeks looked the same. Monday morning, I head to O'Hare. I'd fly out. Thursday evening, I'd fly home. Friday, spend all day catching up on everything that I couldn't get done during the week. And Saturday and Sunday, more catching up and everything that I missed at home while I was gone. Then I prepared to do it all over again, Monday morning, 6 a.m. flight out. My work weeks, 60 hours, was considered the norm. It was expected. And if I'm honest, again, I wore that as a badge of honor. I was proud. I was like, yeah, I'm a mover, a shaker. It's great. I was tired. And something started to happen. Didn't happen all at once. That is the interesting thing about capacity. I told you, it slowly leaves you. First, I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed, I was exhausted. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and I still hadn't fallen asleep. I have a morning meeting with a client and I'm just lying there in a hotel room, just lying there. Brain wouldn't shut off. I'd be replaying the day's events in my mind. I'd be figuring out, okay, what problems do I still have to solve? Who has to do what? What do I have to delegate? I'd be reliving conversations. Eventually, I couldn't make simple decisions. I had so much brain fog. I would open my computer and I'd stare at it. I don't even remember why I opened it. I don't remember what email I was supposed to be sending. It was getting bad. It was getting so bad. One day, I started to have a physical reaction. I broke out in hives. And let me tell you, that was painful. I wasn't having an allergic reaction. I was having like a nervous system reaction. Hives all over. I gained weight. Again, I look good now. I look good. I still look good even when I was a little rotund. I looked good. But I was gaining weight, and it didn't matter if I worked out. It didn't matter what I was doing, but I was just gaining weight. I had allergies generally, and I had to take allergy medication every day. My doctor told me I was borderline diabetic. And then there were two things that still get my attention today that say, Donna, you're overloaded now. The first is my eye starts twitching. I'll feel it. Just twitch, 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 twitch. And then the other one is the vein in my head starts throbbing. And if somebody says, if they start looking at me too hard, oh, then I know it's showing. So yeah, the body will tell you. The body will try to have that conversation with you. The problem was I was not listening. So I thought that was normal. I thought this is how people were. If you're successful, this is what you do. It's just the cost of being successful. So that wake-up call didn't come from that diagnosis. That wake-up call came because I finally stopped and asked myself a question that I did not consider before, which was, what if success doesn't even look like this? That one question started to change the trajectory of my life. But it wasn't overnight. So a few years later, I'm still a road warrior, and I find myself walking into a conference room. And I thought maybe it was just me, but this is when I learned entire teams can lose capacity. Entire team. And when that happens, oh buddy, let me tell you. So the consequences of when multiple people that are supposed to be going towards a destination together lose their sense of capacity, the entire organization begins to suffer. So I walked into this conference room. I was in Tennessee, and it was for a healthcare technology implementation. The project was already behind schedule. The client was frustrated. The team was exhausted. And my role was simple on paper. Figure out what's wrong, get everybody back on track. I walked in, and like this picture, no one looked up. No one was talking. Everybody was just hunched on their computers. Some people were doing the dead eye stare that I recognized. They weren't actually typing anything. They were just staring at it like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. So that was happening. There wasn't conversation. There wasn't collaboration. Just silence and coffee cups. The project manager on the team, who was a consultant, was threatening to quit. The client's leadership, directors and VPs, were ready to resign. That's how bad it was. People were working weekends. They were working long hours. These were capable people, absolutely capable to do what needed to be done. And somehow, everything was falling further and further behind. And then the client head, who really looked, he looked like this. He really did. He had a little bit more color in his hair, but he looks like this man. He calls me in his office and he says, I don't care what you, because I'm in Tennessee, I don't care what you have to do. Lock them in a room, slide food under the door, do whatever it takes, get this done. He was not joking. At the time, I thought I had walked into just a general project management problem that could be solved. But looking back, it was different. I walked into an organization that accumulated what I call capacity debt. Work's become so urgent, nobody has time to think, every decision has become reactive, communication is shorter, trust has thinned to nil. Creativity's gone. People can't solve problems. Without creativity, you can't think outside the box. So how are you going to solve a problem? So those years in consulting really did teach me that when teams lose capacity, the first thing to disappear isn't productivity. It's more about their curiosity. They don't ask, is there a better way to do this? They just say, how do I get through today? Innovation becomes compliance. Collaboration becomes obligation. Leadership becomes crisis management. And everyone starts believing this is just high performance. I'm in a high performing team and I'm not cutting the mustard. That's what people start to believe. The challenge is, from the outside, the organization in and of itself appears busy. Calendars are full, meetings are happening, emails are getting answered, deadlines continue to be chased, activity remains high, but capacity goes down. And that's why so many organizations really miss it. So it's not the organizations that burn out, it's the people. They're measuring output instead of the human system that is producing said output. Eventually, we were able to stabilize the project. We were able to address the technical issues. And perhaps that's because I was coming in fresh and I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but all we have to do is this, and this, and it's fine, guys, it's fine. Let's go out to dinner. Let's have some drinks. No, we're not going to work tonight. We're going to go have some fun. Come on, client. I don't care what the crazy man in the suit said. We're doing this now. We redesigned the migration approach, improved communication, and the project finally moved forward. But I left Tennessee carrying a question that stayed with me for years. Why do exceptionally capable people slowly lose that ability to perform at the level we know they're capable of? Again, it's not that they're unintelligent. It's not that they're tired. And I skipped a whole slide, but that's fine. It's because the quality of our thinking is directly influenced by the state of the system doing the thinking. And that system is the human. It is the human. So the human is an operating system. Our laptop has an operating system. Now, everybody in here has a laptop, right? Everybody knows that, over time, after we start, saving all the pictures of our dogs and cats and kids and cousins and parents, and then we've added so many updates because there's always updates. And then all of a sudden, our laptop starts to slow down. The human is the same way. We're the same way. You could buy the fastest processor, you could do every upgrade, but somehow stuff eventually starts taking longer. But the computer itself isn't broken. It just doesn't have capacity to continue to do what you need it to do. Same thing happens to leaders. If our internal operating system is overloaded, our thinking narrows, patience shortens, creativity declines, and decision-making becomes reactive instead of intentional. We're unable to solve today's problems, or if we are, we start creating tomorrow's problems because we can't figure out the best path of action. Because the system that produces our thinking is operating under too much strain. So for years, organizations have invested millions of dollars improving technology, improving processes, improving strategies, becoming efficient. But all of those are great investments, needed investments. But how come we're not doing the same things for ourselves? I want you to sit and think about that for a second. So when I said about recovery, why are we not spending that same type of investment on ourselves? Every innovation, negotiation, customer interaction, difficult conversation requires a human element. We can measure revenue, utilization, output, growth. But what is the current capacity of the people producing those results? Capacity isn't just physical. It's not, oh, I just need 5 FTEs to get this done. Capacity is multidimensional. When most people hear that word recovery, they usually are like, oh, sleep, maybe, just taking time. And sleep is important. Taking time is important. But it's part of a larger system. We need to think of it as almost an orchestra working together. Physical, mental, neurological, emotional, creative, social, your purpose. They're not separate. They work in concert. When they're working together, we're able to be the best leaders that we need to be. Conflict is manageable. Energy becomes contagious. But the minute something falls out of rhythm, the audience starts to notice. But they don't know what it is, but it feels off. You've been at a concert, at church, and somebody's clapping off beat. Everybody's clapping together, and you hear that one person. And you're like, and then it starts to throw you off. And then if you get thrown off, then all of a sudden your partner's like, wait, what are you? And they just stop clapping altogether. That's how capacity works. And that's how it starts to infiltrate. That reduction, that decline starts to infiltrate teams. So, I'm going to do one more kind of anecdote. Now, we all have cars, right? Okay, I was in the city. I know some of us wouldn't, but we all have a car. And we all know that occasionally that dashboard light comes on and you're like, oh, what's wrong now? I don't want to have to take it in. But the dash light isn't a problem. The dash light's information. The light itself isn't what needs fixing. It's just telling you something is requiring your attention. And our lives work in the same similar vein. The challenge is, again, most of us have become accustomed to ignoring that light. How many of you guys have driven with that oil light on for a while? I know I am not the only one. So, if we don't recognize the warning lights, if we don't pay attention to them, and we just normalize them, we, as ourselves, we do the, I'm just getting older. I'm just busy. I'll take care of it tomorrow. I'll wait till tomorrow. That's just how it is. But those are not explanations. They could be warning lights. So, as I've worked now in healthcare and in wellness, I've had the privilege of talking with hundreds, almost thousands of people that have walked through the door. Some are teachers, service people, entrepreneurs, sales executives, parents, retirees, all different walks of life have come through our doors. And no one comes in and says, my capacity is down. I just need a bit of self-care. No one says that. No one talks like that. What you hear is, and I know everybody's heard these, I'm just tired. I can't seem to shut my brain off. Man, I've been waking up at 3 a.m. and I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so irritable. I'm exhausted and I can't sleep. Or my favorite, I feel like I'm constantly behind. But my ultimate favorite, Who said that? Who in this room has said that? Be honest. Thank you, Dave. I'm fine. I think I'm fine. I say it all the time. Even when we're not fine. We know we're not fine. But I have curiosity around that because fine has become a dangerous word. Leaders often say it, but what it really means is I've adapted to feeling this way, but I've forgotten what better feels like. So that's the first issue in identifying when you're starting to lose your capacity. And therefore, you just notice consequences. The short temper, forgotten appointments, lack of patience, maybe some shallow breathing, inability to be fully present with the people that you care about. But these signals come before the crisis. The key is we need to start to read them. So this is why I think of the leadership dashboard. If I asked some of you, you might be able to answer, what's your company's profitability? How much employee turnover have you experienced? How's customer satisfaction? Those are great numbers to know, great things to know. But there's different questions we should also be asking ourselves as leaders. And we shouldn't ask them just today, or we should ask them about today, not last year after a vacation. Today. How clear is your thinking? How much energy do you genuinely have? How present are you in the conversations that matter most? How connected do you feel to the people around you? How connected do you feel to the reason you do what you do? And they're not wellness questions, they're actually leadership questions, because every decision we make is influenced by how we answer them. So originally, long ago, I thought leaders were just responsible for managing organizations. But today, I believe leaders are also responsible for managing the condition of the system doing the leading. Now, what is our system? The system is the human. So that's themselves. Not because leadership is about us, but because leadership is expressed through us. Every conversation, our decisions, our relationships, our culture, everything flows from the human first. And if our operating systems are neglected, then that means everything downstream will also suffer. So one of the greatest responsibilities we have as leaders is to steward our own capacity so that we can continue to serve others well. There's a misconception about leadership that it only requires becoming better, adding another skill, reading another book, adding another productivity system, an app, another strategy. And while sometimes that is true, it's not always the case. At some point, growth doesn't require you to add more. It requires space. Think about organizations for a moment when a company wants to become more innovative, It doesn't just add a bunch of meetings to the calendar. It might remove some red tape. You know, those special project teams that work outside of the rules that everybody else has to work around. Gets rid of some bureaucracy. It creates space. When a manufacturer wants to improve efficiency, it starts to eliminate waste before increasing production. When we reorganize business, we don't just add responsibilities. We need to clarify priorities, simplify some processes, and then intentionally create space. So why do we treat ourselves differently? I think a great thing about leadership skill is to learn what to release. Not because we're giving up something, but because we're making room for something else. To think, notice, create, connect, be present. Some of us need to release unrealistic expectations. Guilty. Some of us need to release perfectionism. Guilty again. Some need to release the belief that asking for help is weakness. Definitely guilty. Some just need to release the idea that exhaustion is the price of success. Okay, Donna, I get it. One value that I had was tied to how much I could endure. I'll say that again. One thing that I had to really release was how much I could endure. If I could outwork everyone, that meant I was succeeding. But that's kind of what I looked like in the end. I wasn't building capacity.
Donna, you look way better.
I'm telling you, I really did. I was like decrepit for a while. I look better now, I do. But I was borrowing against tomorrow's capacity to handle things today. And when you do that, you start to create that deficit. Everything got a little lower, and I'd borrow again. Eventually, I was depleted. Surviving and thriving can look similar on the outside, maybe those first two, until it doesn't when you get to those last two. And so I would say we need to take a book out of nature. Every season teaches us something about leadership. Winter doesn't apologize for resting. Spring doesn't rush growth. Summer doesn't question its abundance. And autumn does not cling to every leaf. Each season understands something we often forget. There's wisdom in timing. There's wisdom in transition. And there's wisdom in letting go. And leadership should not be about learning how to push harder through every season. It should be learning to recognize the season we're in and then acting accordingly. Because one strategy for one season does not always work in the next season and could undermine your efforts. So earlier I told you about that mountain in Vail. That mountain wasn't really about skiing. It was about awareness. I had two choices: pretend I was prepared, or honestly acknowledge where I was. One choice protected my ego, and I'm gonna tell you, I can be egotistical. I'm getting better. The other protected my future. Leadership asks us to make that same decision every day. Can I keep going? Most of us can. But the better question is the way I'm leading today creating capacity that I'll need tomorrow? It's a different framing. One is about endurance, one is about stewardship. And I believe stewardship is the higher calling. Leadership hasn't been about proving how much we can carry. It's about ensuring we remain capable of carrying what matters most. So it's courageous as a leader to say, I need to create space. Not to just say, I've got this. We need space to think before reacting, to listen before answering, to recover before reaching depletion, and space to be the kind of leader that the team actually needs. Capacity doesn't happen by accident. It's designed. Every single day, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So back in my consulting days, we would always ask clients, what system produced the result? Because every result, good or bad, is usually the product of a system. And leadership works the same way. The leader you become next year is being designed today. Now that's incredibly humbling as well as hopeful. Because if our current system produced our current results and we don't like those results, we have the ability to change and redesign it. So let's talk about some of the inputs for that system. The first, what we consume. Not just food, but our information. Remember this morning, how many of us looked at the news? Don't look at the news first thing in the morning. Just don't do it. Conversations, media, noise, conflict. Everything we allow in our minds becomes part of our operating system. The second, what we experience. Movement, stillness, nature, meaningful connection, challenge, recovery, learning. Our experiences expand our capacity or diminish our capacity. And finally, it's what we contribute. And this is also something I did not fully appreciate earlier in my career. Purpose is not something we find, but it's something we practice. Every day we contribute something, be it encouragement, leadership, wisdom, creativity, or service. Or if we happen to be depleted, we unintentionally contribute anxiety, impatience, reactivity, distractions. The quality of what we contribute to others is directly influenced by what we have been putting into ourselves. This is one of the reasons that I started working, or I created, I should say, Halo Heat, and why we're evolving. When I first opened, many people assumed that we were just a sauna studio. We learned, we listened, we had conversations, and we said, people are seeking the ability to become themselves again. Sometimes it was physical recovery. Sometimes it was their respiratory health. Sometimes it was just a space that they could get away for 60 minutes and just have some settling. The modality changed, but the human need did not. People are looking for the capacity to show up differently in their lives. So I no longer think about wellness as a collection of services that I offer. I think about it as creating intentional inputs. Not because one modality is the answer. There is not one answer because we're all very different. Leadership is built through one habit. It's built through the consistent accumulation of intentional inputs over time. Just as financial wealth grows through consistent deposits, leadership capacity grows through consistent investment. Small ones that are repeated often. So, for practicality's sake, I will leave you with some morning questions that you can ask yourself tomorrow morning instead of looking at your phone. So before you pick that up, ask yourself these 5 questions. How clear is my thinking today? How's my energy? Am I fully present? What do I need to release? What one input would increase my capacity? "60 seconds, all you need. 5 questions. Because we're not able to redesign a system unless we observe that system. And leadership begins with observation. So before we close, I have one more final thing for you. I want you to think about it. I'm not going to ask you to shout it out, but just sit and think for a moment. What one investment will you make in your leadership capacity? Who benefits by that investment that you're making if you actually follow through with it? It could be your spouse, your child, your employees, your business partner, your customers. Maybe it's the next generation of leaders. Leadership is never experienced in isolation. Everything we do ripples. The patience we bring to a meeting, the calm we bring to those difficult conversations, the creativity we bring to solving those problems. And I'll tell you one last story, because I like stories. And this one, now she kind of did look like this too, except her hair was also darker. Jane was my boss back at Blue Cross when I was an analyst. And one day she called me in her office and she says, "Donna, if you want to become a leader, and I know you're capable of being a leader, you have to leave." She wasn't firing me, but what she was doing was she believed in me. She did. She told me to go experience more, learn more, grow more. And she was like, and after you do all that, if you still want to come back here, you can come back here. But you need to go. She didn't give me a promotion, but she gave me perspective. She saw capacity in me that I hadn't recognized in myself yet, and that was leadership. So it's not simply just helping people perform. Leadership is helping people become. So when we began today, I told you about that mountain in Vail, where I realized I was not a bad skier, but I wasn't ready for that mountain. So the question we should all ask ourselves is, am I intentionally building the capacity to climb the mountain that is actually in front of me? Is your team just experiencing your knowledge? Or do you recognize that they're also experiencing your presence, your patience, your curiosity, your energy, and your capacity every day? And then maybe years from now, when somebody will be standing here and they'll say, yeah, Dan told me I had to leave because he saw something in me. So leadership isn't measured by what we want to accomplish. It's measured by the condition we leave the people entrusted to us. Every organization is ultimately a human system. Every human system depends upon people, and every person has a finite capacity to think, create, connect, care, and lead. The quality of our leadership will always be limited by the quality of our internal capacity. So build it, protect it, steward it. Not only because your future depends on it, but because someone else's future may also depend on it. Thank you.